She was locking up her cafe at midnight when a millionaire knocked and whispered, "Please, just one more cup." Hello, viewer. Thanks for joining us. Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments, along with the city you're watching from. Now let's continue with the story. Harper wiped down the espresso machine one final time, her movements efficient and practiced. $340 in sales for a Tuesday. Not bad, but tomorrow needed to hit 400 to stay on track for the month. She glanced at her notepad, where tomorrow's goals were scribbled in purple ink. Call the maple syrup supplier. Confirm Friday's book club setup. Order extra oat milk. The college kids were going through it faster than she could restock. The Edison bulbs cast warm circles of light across the empty cafe as Harper switched off the main overhead lights. Luna's cafe had been her great-grandmother's dream, and now it was her responsibility. Every dollar counted, every customer mattered. A soft tapping sound made her look up from organizing tomorrow's pastry delivery schedule. Through the rain-speckled window, a figure stood under the dim streetlight. He held something in his hand, something white and cylindrical that looked familiar. Harper walked closer to the glass door. The man stepped into the light, and recognition hit her immediately. The quiet customer from this afternoon, corner booth by the window, double cortado with an extra shot. He'd worked on his laptop for 3 solid hours, occasionally glancing up when other customers came and went, but never bothering anyone. He raised the white cup slightly, and Harper could see the Luna's Cafe logo clearly now. Harper unlocked the door and opened it just enough to speak. "You're my 3-hour Tuesday regular. Double cortado, corner booth by the window." The man's shoulders relaxed visibly. "I wasn't sure you'd remember me." Harper smiled. "Of course I remember. You helped me hit my Tuesday sales goal. What brings you back at closing time?" He shifted awkwardly, still holding the empty cup. "I bought this coffee at 2 o'clock, but I've been working in my car outside until you close. Every night this week, actually." Harper blinked. "That sounds incredibly lonely. And cold. Why not just come inside?" His voice got quieter. "I know it sounds strange, but your cafe, it's the first place I've felt productive in months. The atmosphere, the gentle noise, even the way you interact with customers. I was hoping. Maybe you'd consider letting me work here during your closing routine. I'd pay for the electricity and coffee, obviously." Harper studied his face. There was something genuine in his expression, a vulnerability that caught her off guard. She'd grown up in this small Vermont town, developed instincts about people, and her instincts said this man wasn't dangerous, just isolated. "Listen," she said, making a decision that surprised even her. "I usually spend an hour here after closing, organizing for tomorrow and doing paperwork. Having someone else around actually makes me feel safer. Come on in." Relief flooded his features. "Really? You don't mind?" Harper stepped back, opening the door wider. "Just don't expect fresh coffee. The machine's already been cleaned." He followed her inside, and Harper noticed how carefully he wiped his feet on the mat, how he waited for her permission before choosing a seat. "I'm Harper, by the way. Harper Clark, Sterling Hayes, and thank you, this means more than you probably realize." Harper returned to her closing tasks, conscious of Sterling settling into his familiar corner booth. The cafe felt different with him here, less lonely, more purposeful somehow. As she updated her inventory notebook, she found herself stealing glances at him. His focus was intense, fingers moving quickly across his laptop keyboard. Whatever he did for work, he took it seriously. About 20 minutes into their shared silence, curiosity got the better of her. "What kind of work keeps you up this late?" she asked, not looking up from her supplier order forms. Sterling paused his typing. "Client calls mostly. My business partners are based on the West Coast, so their workday starts when everyone else in Vermont is thinking about dinner. That explains the late hours." "What kind of business? Technology consulting, software development mostly?" Harper nodded, making a note to order extra half and half. The college professors loved their coffee light and sweet. You know, she said thoughtfully, I've been considering extended evening hours for a while. There might be other people like you who need workspace after traditional business hours. Sterling looked up from his laptop. Really? You'd consider that? The idea was forming even as she spoke. I've got the space, and keeping the lights on for one person isn't much different from keeping them on for 10. The question is whether there's enough demand to make it worthwhile. I'd certainly be a regular customer, and I'd be happy to pay premium rates for the convenience. Harper appreciated his straightforward approach. No bargaining, no assumption that she'd give him special treatment. Just a fair business proposition. Let me think about it, she said. Maybe we could try it on a trial basis. Sterling smiled, the first genuine smile she'd seen from him. I'd really appreciate that. And Harper? Yes? I've been coming back every night hoping you'd still be open. I just didn't have the courage to ask until tonight. The next evening, Harper found herself looking forward to Sterling's arrival. She'd spent the day researching the economics of extended hours, running numbers on additional electricity costs and potential revenue. When Sterling appeared at the door at exactly 9:30, carrying his laptop bag and wearing the same hopeful expression, Harper realized she'd already made her decision. Come in, she said, stepping aside. I've got a proposition for you. Sterling settled into his usual booth, while Harper poured herself a cup of decaf from the pot she'd kept warm. Here's what I'm thinking, she began, sliding into the seat across from him. I normally spend about 90 minutes here after closing, handling inventory, bookkeeping, and prep for tomorrow. If you want to work during that time, you're welcome to do it. Sterling leaned forward. What would that cost? Harper had calculated this carefully. $25 per session. That covers electricity, Wi-Fi, and one coffee refill. If this becomes a regular arrangement and I decide to officially extend evening hours, we can renegotiate. That's more than fair. When can we start? We just did, Harper said with a grin. Welcome to Luna's Café unofficial evening shift. Sterling pulled out his laptop, and Harper returned to her closing routine. But tonight felt different. Purposeful rather than solitary. As she organized tomorrow's supplies, Sterling's presence provided a comfortable background energy. The soft clicking of his keyboard blended with the gentle hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of rain against the windows. After about 30 minutes, Harper's curiosity got the better of her again. Can I ask what kind of clients require such specific timing? She said, glancing up from her inventory spreadsheet. Tech companies, mostly. I help them implement privacy protection software. With data breaches happening so frequently, businesses are finally taking digital security seriously. Harper nodded thoughtfully. That makes sense. The cafe's Wi-Fi probably isn't exactly high security. Actually, your internet setup is better than most small businesses. Someone did their homework when they installed your network. That was probably my Uncle Mark. He's an IT specialist in Burlington. Insisted I needed proper equipment if I was going to offer free Wi-Fi. Smart man. Most coffee shops just buy whatever's cheapest and wonder why customers complain about slow connections. Harper felt a flutter of pride. She'd worked hard to make Luna's Café a place where people wanted to spend time, not just grab coffee and leave. Customer experience matters, she said. My great-grandmother always said the cafe should feel like an extension of people's homes. Sterling paused his typing. Your great-grandmother owned this place. She built it from nothing in 1968, came here from a small town in rural Kentucky with her husband, saved every penny for 3 years to open Luna's. It was named after my grandmother, her daughter. My great-grandmother said her daughter had a serene, luminous presence, like moonlight, gentle enough to comfort people in darkness, bright enough to guide them toward morning. That's an incredible legacy. You must feel a lot of responsibility carrying it forward. Every day, Harper admitted, but also a lot of pride. This cafe has been part of people's lives for over 50 years. First dates, business meetings, study sessions, family celebrations. Sometimes I think the walls have absorbed all that positive energy. Sterling smiled. I can feel it. There's something special about this place. Harper looked around the cafe, at the mismatched vintage chairs her great-grandmother had collected over the years, the community bulletin board covered with local announcements, the photos documenting decades of Milbrook history. Thank you for saying that. It means a lot. They worked in comfortable silence for another hour. When Harper finished her tasks, she found herself reluctant to end the evening. Same time tomorrow? Sterling asked, packing up his laptop. I'll be here. As Sterling headed for the door, he turned back. Harper, yes. This might sound presumptuous, but I have a feeling this arrangement is going to work out well for both of us. Harper watched him disappear into the darkness beyond the streetlight. She had the same feeling, though she couldn't quite put her finger on why. Something told her Sterling Hayes was going to become more than just an evening customer. By the third evening, Harper had established a new routine. She'd prep the espresso machine for easy cleaning, set aside a fresh pot of decaf, and organize her paperwork so she could focus on tasks that didn't require concentration once Sterling arrived. Tonight, she'd brought samples of potential evening menu items, pastries that would hold well later in the day, specialty drinks that could attract after-dinner customers. Sterling knocked gently at 9:30 sharp, and Harper noticed he looked more relaxed than he had the first 2 nights. "Welcome back," she said, unlocking the door. "I've got something to show you." "Oh?" Sterling settled into his booth as Harper arranged small plates on the table. "If I'm seriously considering evening hours, I need to develop a menu that works for later crowds. Try these and tell me what you think." Sterling examined the offerings, a cardamom orange scone, a chocolate croissant, and a small sample cup of what looked like hot chocolate. "This is quite the spread," he said, tasting the scone first. "Wow, this is incredible. Family recipe. My great-grandmother believed every pastry should tell a story." Sterling tried the croissant next, his expression appreciative. "If this is the quality you're considering for evening service, you'll have customers lined up around the block." Harper felt warmth spread through her chest. Coming from someone who'd clearly traveled and probably experienced high-end food, that was meaningful praise. "The drink is a special spiced cocoa," she explained. "A cherished family recipe with cinnamon and a touch of chili pepper." Sterling sipped carefully, then his eyebrows rose. "That's amazing. Complex, but not overwhelming." Harper pulled out her notebook. "I'm trying to figure out if there's actually demand for evening cafe service in Milbrook. The college students might come, but I need to know if working professionals would be interested too." Sterling considered this while taking another bite of scone. "Have you researched other small towns with successful evening cafe culture?" "Actually, no. I've been focused on local market research. If you don't mind me saying, you might want to look at places like Brattleboro or Montpelier. Similar demographics, but they've successfully developed after-hours coffee culture. That's a great idea. You sound like someone who's studied this before." Sterling paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. "I've spent time in a lot of small towns for work. You start to notice patterns in what makes local businesses successful." "What kind of patterns?" "Community involvement is crucial. The most successful cafes become gathering places, not just service providers. They host events, support local artists, provide meeting space for community groups." Harper nodded enthusiastically. "We already do some of that. Local art on the walls, book club meetings, acoustic music on Friday evenings. That's perfect. You're building exactly what evening customers would want, a space that feels connected to the community rather than just commercial." As Harper took notes, she found herself studying Sterling's face. His insights were sophisticated, his understanding of small business dynamics more nuanced than most customers would have. "Can I ask how long you've been doing technology consulting?" she said. "About 6 years professionally. But I've been interested in how technology affects local communities for much longer. That's quite a specialty. Most tech people I've met focus on bigger markets." Sterling's expression became thoughtful. I think small communities are where technology can make the most meaningful difference. Help local businesses compete with larger companies. Connect neighbors. Preserve what makes places special while improving quality of life. Harper felt something shift in her perception of him. This wasn't just someone looking for convenient workspace. This was someone who understood the delicate balance between progress and preservation that small towns navigated every day. You know, she said, closing her notebook, I think you might be exactly the perspective I need for planning evening services. Sterling looked surprised. Really? You understand both the technology side and the community dynamics. Would you be interested in providing some informal consulting while I develop this concept? I'd be honored to help, though I should mention I might have some insights into the local business community that could be relevant. Oh, how so? Sterling hesitated, then seemed to make a decision. I've been researching Milbrook's economic development patterns since I moved here. The town is at an interesting crossroads, close enough to Burlington to attract remote workers, but still small enough to maintain authentic community character. Harper leaned forward. You moved here recently, about 2 months ago. I'm renting the Morrison estate on the hill. Harper's coffee cup stopped halfway to her lips. The Morrison estate. That place has been empty for 3 years. Sterling nodded. The owners were looking for a long-term tenant who'd take care of the property. It works well for my business needs. Harper tried to process this information. The Morrison estate was the most expensive property in Milbrook, a renovated colonial mansion with 10 acres of land. That's quite a setup for a consulting business. Sterling met her eyes directly. Harper, there's something I should probably tell you about my work situation. Yes, I'm not just a consultant. I own the company, and we're not exactly small scale. Harper felt her pulse quicken. What kind of company? Zenith Tech. We develop privacy protection software for businesses and organizations. Harper's notebook slipped from her fingers. Zenith Tech, the company that's been in the news for those big corporate contracts. Sterling nodded, looking almost apologetic. That's us. Harper stared at him, recalibrating everything she thought she knew about her quiet evening customer. So when you said you were researching the local business community, I meant as someone considering significant investment in the area, both personally and professionally. Harper sat back in her chair, studying Sterling's face. He looked nervous, almost vulnerable, nothing like what she'd expect from a successful tech entrepreneur. Why didn't you mention this before? Sterling's voice got quiet. Because the last few months, I've been trying to figure out how to build a life that's about more than just business success. And your cafe, this space you've created, it represents everything I've been looking for. Harper felt her world tilting slightly. The quiet customer who'd been seeking workspace was actually a millionaire who could probably buy every business on Main Street. But as she looked at Sterling's anxious expression, she realized something important hadn't changed. He was still the person who'd politely asked for workspace, who'd offered to pay fair rates, who'd shown genuine appreciation for her great-grandmother's legacy. Well, she said finally, that certainly explains how you know so much about small business economics. Sterling laughed nervously. Are you upset that I didn't tell you immediately? Harper considered this. I'm processing it. But Sterling, yes, your money doesn't change our arrangement or how I see you. You're still just the guy who needs caffeine and Wi-Fi after 9 p.m. Relief flooded Sterling's features. Thank you. That means everything to me. Though I do have one question. Anything. If you own a successful tech company, why are you working in a small-town cafe instead of some fancy co-working space? Sterling's smile was genuine and warm. Because, Harper Clark, fancy co-working spaces don't have cardamom orange scones. And they definitely don't have owners who make you feel like you belong somewhere. The next morning, Harper couldn't stop thinking about Sterling's revelation as she prepared for the morning rush. She'd barely slept, her mind spinning with questions about his real reasons for being in Milbrook. The breakfast crowd provided welcome distraction, familiar faces ordering familiar drinks, easy conversation about weather and weekend plans. But even as she pulled shots and steamed milk, part of her attention was focused on evening plans. Around 2 o'clock, her phone rang. The caller ID showed her business banker, Tom Morrison. "Hey, Harper." Tom's voice was cheerful. "I wanted to give you a heads up about some activity in town that might affect local businesses." "What kind of activity?" "We've got a tech consultant who's been asking detailed questions about local business investments and real estate opportunities. Seems like he's considering some significant moves that could impact the area." Harper's stomach fluttered. "What kind of questions?" "Market analysis stuff, revenue trends for Main Street businesses, property values, demographic shifts, professional-level research, not just casual interest." Harper gripped the phone tighter. "This consultant, would his name happen to be Sterling Hayes?" Tom paused. "You know him. He's been working in my cafe after hours. We've talked about business development, but he didn't mention he was researching investment opportunities." "Well, between you and me, Harper, if he's spending time at Luna's, that's probably a very good sign for your business. This guy's company handles some major contracts." Harper felt a mix of excitement and unease. What exactly did he ask about? Everything, really. Local employment patterns, supplier relationships, foot traffic analysis. The kind of research someone does when they're considering either opening something new or acquiring something existing. Harper's heart rate increased. "Acquiring something existing? I'm not saying that's his plan," Tom said quickly. "But he's definitely not just some casual tech worker. This is someone with serious financial resources and professional investment experience." After hanging up, Harper stood behind the counter staring at the empty cafe. The afternoon lull usually provided peaceful time for inventory and prep work, but today her mind raced with implications. Sterling had been researching local businesses while sitting in her cafe, working on his laptop, asking her questions about community dynamics and evening service potential. Was she just another business opportunity he was evaluating? The thought made her feel simultaneously naive and disappointed. She'd started to think of their evening arrangement as something personal, a friendship developing around shared workspace and mutual appreciation. But maybe she'd completely misread the situation. Maybe Sterling's interest in Luna's cafe was purely professional. By closing time, Harper had worked herself into a state of nervous energy. When Sterling knocked at 9:30, she opened the door with a carefully neutral expression. "Good evening," she said, stepping aside to let him enter. Sterling seemed to sense her mood immediately. "Everything okay?" Harper locked the door and turned to face him. "Actually, I have some questions." "Of course. What's on your mind?" Harper crossed her arms. "I got an interesting phone call today from my banker. He mentioned a tech consultant has been researching local business investments, asking very detailed questions about revenue patterns and market opportunities." Sterling's expression became cautious. "I see. He seemed to think this consultant might be considering acquiring existing businesses rather than just providing services." Harper watched Sterling's face carefully. His expression shifted from cautious to uncomfortable. "That consultant would be me," Sterling said quietly. "And yes, I have been researching the local business community." Harper felt her stomach drop. "So our conversations about evening services, community involvement, my great-grandmother's legacy, you were conducting market research." Sterling's eyes widened. "No, Harper, that's not what this is about at all." "Then what is it about? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you've been studying my business while pretending to be a customer." Sterling ran his hand through his hair, clearly struggling with how to respond. "You're right that I've been researching local businesses, but it's not because I'm looking to acquire anything." "Then why?" because I'm trying to figure out how to invest in this community in a way that actually helps people instead of just generating profit." Harper studied his face. That sounds like exactly what someone planning acquisitions would say. Sterling sat heavily in his usual booth. "Harper, can I tell you something about why I really moved to Milbrook?" Harper remained standing, arms still crossed. "Go ahead. Zenith Tech has been incredibly successful financially, but somewhere along the way, I lost sight of why I started the company in the first place. I came here because I wanted to find a way to use business success to support communities instead of just extracting value from them." "That's a nice story," Harper said, hearing the skepticism in her own voice. "But it doesn't explain why you didn't mention you were researching local businesses." "Because I was trying to understand the community before making any decisions about how to contribute to it. I didn't want to be the outsider who shows up with money and assumes he knows what people need." Harper felt some of her anger deflating, but she wasn't ready to let go of her concern completely. "So what did your research conclude?" "That Milbrook has incredible potential for sustainable economic development, but only if it's done in partnership with existing business owners who understand the community. And Luna's Café is exactly the kind of business that should be supported and expanded, not acquired or replaced." Harper sank into the chair across from him. "So you're not planning to buy my cafe?" Sterling looked genuinely shocked. "God, no, Harper, I would never. Your cafe is perfect exactly as it is, with you running it. Then what are you planning?" Sterling leaned forward. "I'm planning to ask if you'd be interested in a business partnership that would provide you with resources to expand evening services while maintaining complete ownership and decision-making authority." Harper blinked. "What kind of partnership?" "Zenith Tech needs a Vermont location for client meetings and team retreats. Instead of building something new or renting generic office space, we'd like to contract with Luna's Café as our official regional meeting venue." Harper tried to process this. "You want to rent my cafe for meetings? I want to pay you market rates for event hosting, catering services, and workspace rental, regular, predictable income that would support your evening service expansion while requiring zero investment risk from you." Harper stared at him. "That's actually a really good business proposition. It's intended to be mutually beneficial. You get stable additional revenue and help with marketing evening services. We get authentic Vermont atmosphere and connection to the local community. Why didn't you just propose this directly instead of researching everything secretly?" Sterling's expression became vulnerable. "Because I wanted to make sure I understood what you were trying to build before suggesting how I might fit into it. And because, Harper, somewhere in all this research, I realized I wasn't just interested in Luna's Café as a business opportunity." "What do you mean?" "I mean, I've fallen for this place, and for the person who created it." Harper felt her heart rate spike. "Sterling, I know this complicates everything, but I needed you to know there's a lot I haven't told you about why I'm really here and why these evenings have become the most important part of my day." Harper looked into his eyes, seeing sincerity and nervousness, and something deeper that made her breath catch. "There's more to why I chose Milbrook," Sterling continued, "and why I chose your cafe, and if you're willing to listen, I'd like to tell you all of it." Harper spent the next morning wrestling with everything Sterling had revealed. Zenith Tech, the Morrison estate, business research disguised as casual conversation, and underneath it all, that final admission that had made her pulse race. The Thursday morning rush provided familiar comfort, regular customers ordering their usual drinks, easy banter about weekend plans, the steady rhythm of espresso shots and steamed milk that had anchored her life for 2 years. But even as she worked, Harper's mind kept returning to Sterling's words. "I've fallen for this place, and for the person who created it." Around noon, when the cafe had emptied except for Mrs. Patterson working on her weekly crossword puzzle, Harper made a decision. She pulled out her phone, and sent a text. "Can we talk before tonight? I have questions about your proposal." Sterling's response came within minutes. "Of course. Would you prefer to meet somewhere else, or should I come to the cafe?" Harper appreciated that he was giving her the choice of setting. "Cafe works. 2 o'clock. I'll be there." When Sterling arrived at exactly 2, Harper noticed he looked nervous. Good, she thought. This conversation was too important for either of them to take lightly. "Come in," she said, gesturing toward the counter. "I made fresh coffee." Sterling accepted the cup gratefully, and Harper noticed his hands weren't entirely steady. "So," Harper began, settling onto the stool across from him, "let's start with the business proposal. You want to contract Luna's as Zenith Tech's Vermont meeting venue. That's right. Regular client meetings, quarterly team retreats, occasional workshop space, professional rates scheduled in advance, with you maintaining complete control over your cafe's atmosphere and operations." Harper had spent the morning researching corporate catering rates and event space rental in Vermont. What you're proposing would generate substantial additional revenue. It's intended to be genuinely beneficial to your business, not just convenient for mine, and in return, Zenith Tech gets authentic Vermont character instead of generic conference room space. Sterling nodded, plus connection to the local community, which matters more to our company culture than you might expect. Harper studied his face. "Why does that matter to a tech company?" "Because Zenith Tech specializes in helping small businesses protect their data and online presence. We work better when we understand the communities our clients serve." "That makes sense." Harper paused, organizing her thoughts. "Now let's talk about the personal side of this situation." Sterling's expression became guarded. "Okay, yesterday you said you'd fallen for this place and for me. But you also said there's more you haven't told me about why you're in Milbrook." "That's true. So before I can evaluate any kind of partnership, business or otherwise, I need complete honesty about your motivations." Sterling took a deep breath. "Fair enough. Can I tell you about my father?" Harper blinked at the unexpected direction. "Of course. My dad owned a hardware store in a small Oregon town, Hayes's Hardware and Home Repair. He built that business on relationships, knew every customer's name, their families, what projects they were working on." Harper felt her defensiveness softening. Sterling's voice carried genuine emotion when he talked about his father. When big box stores moved into the area, Dad could have competed on price or convenience. Instead, he focused on service and community connection. He sponsored Little League teams, donated supplies for school projects, hired local high school kids, and taught them trades. What happened to the store? Dad sold it when he retired 3 years ago, but he made sure the buyer was someone who would maintain the community focus. The new owner still carries on the traditions Dad established. Harper found herself leaning forward. "That's a beautiful legacy. It shaped everything I believed about business until I got caught up in Silicon Valley startup culture. Growth metrics, market expansion, investor returns, all important. But I lost sight of the human element that Dad taught me, and that's why you came to Vermont, partly. Zenith Tech had grown to the point where I could relocate anywhere. I chose Milbrook because I wanted to rediscover what Dad understood about business being part of community fabric." Harper felt her heart softening. "That's not what I expected you to say." "What did you expect? Honestly? Some story about tax advantages or real estate investment opportunities?" Sterling laughed, and Harper realized it was the first completely relaxed sound she'd heard from him. "No, but though I'm sure my accountant wishes I were that practical. So when you started coming to Luna's, I was looking for what Dad's hardware store represented. A place where business and community intersect, where success means more than just profit. And you found that here. I found something even better. I found someone who embodies those values so naturally she probably doesn't even realize how rare that is." Harper felt heat rise in her cheeks. Sterling. I know this complicates the business discussion, but Harper, these past few evenings haven't just been about workspace or even about partnership opportunities. They've been about discovering that the person I've been looking for has been here all along. Harper's pulse quickened. The person you've been looking for, someone who understands that success means building something bigger than yourself, someone who honors the past while creating the future, someone who makes other people feel like they belong. Harper stared at him, processing the weight of what he was saying. I don't know how to respond to that. You don't have to respond right now. But I needed you to know where I stand before we discuss any kind of partnership. Harper stood up, suddenly needing to move. This is a lot, Sterling. I know. And I'm not expecting you to make any decisions today about business or anything else. Harper walked to the window, looking out at Main Street's familiar storefronts. Her great-grandmother had built Luna's Café as a community gathering place. Her parents had maintained that legacy. Now, Harper was facing the possibility of expanding that legacy in ways she'd never imagined. But was she ready to risk her heart in the process? "Can I ask you something?" she said, turning back to Sterling. "Anything. If the business partnership works out, and if we explore whatever this is between us, what happens if the personal side doesn't work?" Sterling considered this seriously. "Then we handle it like the adults we are. The business arrangement continues because it benefits both parties, and we figure out how to be professional colleagues instead of whatever we might become. And if the business partnership doesn't work out, then I'll continue being your most appreciative evening customer, and we'll see what develops naturally without any professional complications." Harper felt some of her tension ease. "You've really thought this through. I've had a lot of sleepless nights to think it through." Harper returned to her seat, decision crystallizing. "Okay, here's what I propose." Sterling straightened, giving her his complete attention. "We try the business partnership first, 1-month trial period, with clearly defined terms and expectations. If that works well, then we can discuss other possibilities." Sterling's smile was warm and genuine. "That sounds perfectly reasonable. But Sterling," Harper's voice became firm, "during this trial period, you need to understand something important about me." "What's that?" "I don't need rescuing. I don't need someone to solve my problems or make my life easier. What I need is a true partner, someone who respects my independence and supports my goals without trying to control them." Sterling nodded seriously. "I wouldn't want it any other way. The last thing I want is to diminish what you've built here." "Good. Because Luna's Café is my domain, and I intend to keep it that way." "I'm counting on it," Sterling said. "That's what makes you so remarkable." Harper felt herself smiling despite her efforts to maintain professional composure. "Well then, I guess we have a business partnership to plan, and maybe," she thought but didn't say, "something even more important to explore." The next evening brought their first official business planning session. Harper had spent the day researching event space requirements and corporate catering standards, determined to approach this partnership with complete professionalism. Sterling arrived at 9:30, carrying a leather portfolio and wearing a slightly more formal shirt than usual. Harper noticed the effort and appreciated it. "Ready to talk business?" she asked, gesturing toward the corner booth where they'd conducted all their previous conversations. "Absolutely." Sterling opened his portfolio and pulled out several printed documents. "I've prepared some preliminary proposals based on Zenith Tech's actual needs and standard Vermont market rates for comparable services." Harper was impressed by his preparation. She'd expected casual conversation, not formal documentation. "Let's see what you're thinking," she said, accepting the papers he offered. The first proposal outlined monthly client meeting space, with specific requirements for seating capacity, technology needs, and catering options. The second covered quarterly team retreats for up to 20 people. The third, detailed occasional workshop space for 2-day intensive sessions. These are substantial events, Harper said, studying the numbers. Much bigger than I was imagining. Is that a problem? We can scale down if needed. Actually, no. This level of regular business would allow me to hire part-time staff and expand evening services significantly. But I want to make sure I can deliver the quality you're expecting. What concerns you most? Catering for 20 people is very different from making individual coffee orders. I'd need to develop new systems, possibly partner with local suppliers for larger quantities. Sterling leaned forward with interest. What kind of partnerships are you thinking about? Harper pulled out her own notebook, where she'd been sketching ideas all day. Miller's Farm for fresh produce. Burlington Bagel Company for breakfast items. Maybe the new bakery on Church Street for desserts. Keep everything local but scale up the quality and presentation. That sounds perfect. Actually, it sounds better than perfect. It supports the local business network while meeting our needs. Harper felt a flutter of excitement. I've been wanting to expand Luna's community connections anyway. This would give me the financial foundation to take those risks. What other changes would you need to make? Better sound system for presentations. Upgraded Wi-Fi to handle multiple devices. Probably some furniture rearrangement for larger groups. Nothing that would change the cafe's essential character. Sterling smiled. You've really thought this through. I spent most of today researching and planning. If I'm going to do this, I want to do it right. What's your assessment of the financial projections? Harper had run the numbers multiple times, hardly believing the results. If we execute this partnership successfully, Luna's revenue would increase by approximately 80% within 6 months. And that would solve the rent increase situation you mentioned completely. Plus, provide enough financial cushion to weather seasonal fluctuations and invest in equipment upgrades. Sterling's expression was satisfied, but not surprised. That was the goal. Harper studied his face. You knew this would work out well for me financially. I researched the local market specifically to ensure that any partnership would genuinely benefit your business, not just provide convenience for mine. Harper felt something warm unfurl in her chest. You could have proposed terms that were much more favorable to Zenith Tech, but then it wouldn't be a real partnership. It would be charity disguised as business, and you deserve better than that. Harper looked down at the proposals, seeing Sterling's respect for her capabilities reflected in every detail. He'd crafted an arrangement that treated her as an equal partner, not a convenient service provider. There's something else I want to discuss, she said, making a decision that surprised even her. What's that? If we're going to be business partners, you should know about Luna's Cafe's history and what it means to this community. I'd love to hear about it. Harper stood up and walked to the wall, where dozens of photographs chronicled the cafe's 5-decade history. My great-grandmother, Rose Eleanor Hayes, came to Vermont in 1967 with my great-grandfather and 3 suitcases. Sterling joined her at the photo wall, his attention completely focused. She worked in the textile mill for 2 years, saving every penny while learning English and studying how successful restaurants operated. Great-Grandma Rose believed coffee was sacred, a drink that brought people together in their most honest moments. Sterling examined a black-and-white photo of a young woman standing proudly in front of a much smaller version of Luna's Café. She looks determined. Stubborn was the family word for it. Harper laughed softly. She refused 3 bank loans because the terms didn't respect her vision. Finally, convinced Mark Santos, the bank president at the time, to give her a chance because she'd memorized every successful cafe's business model within 50 miles. How did she choose the name Luna's? She named it after my grandmother, Eleanor Ellie Hayes. Great-Grandma Rose said her daughter had a serene, luminous presence, like moonlight, gentle enough to comfort people in darkness, bright enough to guide them toward morning. That's beautiful. What happened to your grandmother? She took over the cafe when great-grandma Rose got too old to manage daily operations, kept every one of her mother's traditions while adding her own touches, local art displays, community bulletin board, acoustic music on weekends. And then your parents. My mom inherited the cafe when grandmother Ellie passed away 12 years ago. Mom and Dad expanded the community programming and modernized the kitchen equipment, but maintained the family recipes and welcoming atmosphere. Sterling turned to look at her directly. And now it's your responsibility, the proudest responsibility of my life, Harper said, but also the most challenging. Every decision I make affects not just my livelihood, but this community's gathering place. Is that why you're being so careful about our partnership? Partly, but also because I've learned that the best partnerships honor what came before while building something new. Sterling nodded thoughtfully. Your great-grandmother would approve of that philosophy? I hope so. Harper touched one of the photos gently. She always said the secret to success was remembering that every customer carries stories, and our job is to create space where those stories can be shared safely. Is that what you've been doing for me these past few evenings? Creating space for my story? Harper met his eyes, seeing sincerity and growing affection there. Maybe. Is that what it's felt like? It's felt like coming home, Sterling said quietly, which is something I hadn't realized I was looking for. Harper felt her heart skip. Coming home was exactly how she'd described these evening conversations, too. Sterling, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Yes, I think we should move forward with the business partnership. And I think I'd like to explore what else might be possible between us. Sterling's smile was radiant. Really, but slowly and carefully, and with complete honesty from both of us. I wouldn't want it any other way. Harper looked around the cafe, at the photos documenting generations of love and community service, at the mismatched chairs and warm lighting that had welcomed thousands of conversations over the decades. Then let's build something beautiful together, she said. Something that honors the past and creates a future worth sharing. 2 weeks into their business partnership, Harper knew they'd made the right decision. Zenith Tech's first client meeting had gone smoothly, the catering had exceeded expectations, and Harper had received 3 inquiries from other companies interested in similar arrangements. But the professional success was nothing compared to the personal connection developing between her and Sterling. Their evening routine had evolved into something that felt both comfortable and charged with possibility. They'd talk business for the first hour, then gradually shift into more personal conversation as Harper finished her closing tasks. Tonight felt different, though. Sterling seemed distracted, checking his phone more frequently than usual and occasionally staring out the window with a worried expression. Everything okay? Harper asked, looking up from tomorrow's supply order. Sterling hesitated. Actually, there's something I need to tell you. Something that might affect our partnership. Harper felt her stomach tighten. What kind of something? Zenith Tech has received an acquisition offer, a significant one. Harper's pen stopped moving. Someone wants to buy your company. A major tech corporation has been pursuing us for 8 months. They're offering enough money that my business partners think we'd be crazy to refuse. Harper tried to keep her expression neutral. What do you think? 6 months ago, I would have taken the offer immediately. Financial security, elimination of business stress, freedom to pursue other interests. And now I have reasons to stay involved with Zenith Tech that I didn't have before. Harper's pulse quickened. What kind of reasons? Personal reasons, community reasons, partnership reasons. Sterling closed his laptop and gave her his complete attention. Harper, if I sell Zenith Tech, the corporate contracts we've discussed would disappear. Your additional revenue stream would end before it really began. Harper absorbed this information, recognizing the implications immediately. So our business partnership depends on you maintaining ownership of your company. That's one way to look at it. Sterling's voice was careful. Another way to look at it is that you've given me a reason to want to keep building something instead of cashing out. Harper felt heat rise in her cheeks. Sterling, I'm not saying I'm making this decision entirely because of you, but I am saying that for the first time in years, I can imagine a future that's about more than just maximizing profit. What kind of future? One where I use Zenith Tech's success to support communities like Milbrook, where business partnerships become genuine relationships, where I get to spend my evenings with someone who makes me want to be better than I thought I could be. Harper's heart was racing now. That sounds like a wonderful future. It does to me too. But Harper, I need you to understand something important. What? I'm not making this decision to try to impress you or manipulate you into caring about me. I'm making it because you've helped me remember what kind of person I want to be. Harper stood up and walked around the counter, suddenly needing to be closer to him. What kind of person is that? Someone who builds things instead of just accumulating things. Someone who contributes to communities instead of just extracting value from them. Someone who honors family legacy while creating new traditions. Harper stopped directly in front of him, close enough to see the sincerity in his expression. Those are pretty wonderful goals. They're goals I can only achieve if I have partners who share them. Sterling stood up too, and suddenly they were only inches apart. Harper could feel the warmth radiating from his body, could see the way his breathing had become slightly uneven. Harper, he said softly, I need to tell you something else. Yes, I'm falling in love with you. With your strength, your vision, your incredible heart, and I don't want to hide that anymore. Harper felt as if all the air had left her lungs. Sterling, I know this complicates everything. Our business partnership, our friendship, the decision about Zenith Tech, but I needed you to know how I feel before I make any major life decisions. Harper looked into his eyes, seeing vulnerability and hope and something so tender it made her breath catch. Sterling, she whispered, I'm falling in love with you too. Relief flooded his features. Really, really, you're nothing like what I expected, and everything I didn't know I was hoping for. Sterling lifted his hand slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted. When she didn't move, he touched her cheek gently. May I kiss you? He asked. Harper's answer was to step closer, eliminating the remaining distance between them. When their lips met, Harper felt something shift fundamentally in her understanding of possibility. This wasn't just attraction or infatuation, this was recognition. Recognition of someone who could be her true partner in building a life worth living. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. Wow, Harper whispered. That's exactly what I was thinking, Sterling said, resting his forehead against hers. So what happens now? Harper asked. Now we figure out how to build a future together, in business and in love. Harper smiled, feeling more hopeful than she had in years. I think I'd like that very much. But Sterling? Yes, don't make any decisions about Zenith Tech because of me. Make them because they're right for you and for what you want to build. What if what I want to build includes you? Then we'll build it together, Harper said, and kissed him again. The following week brought changes that tested both their business partnership and their growing romantic relationship. Word had spread through Milbrook's tight-knit community that Luna's Café was hosting corporate events, and reactions were decidedly mixed. Harper arrived at work Monday morning to find a handwritten note taped to her door. Hope you're not selling out to big city money, it read, signed only with a concerned neighbor. Her stomach sank. This was exactly what she'd been worried about. The morning rush provided no relief from her anxiety. Several regular customers made pointed comments about changes at the cafe, and Mrs. Patterson asked directly whether Luna's was still going to serve regular folks or just fancy business people. By afternoon, Harper's stress had reached a breaking point. When Sterling arrived for their evening meeting, she was ready for a difficult conversation. "We need to talk," she said, gesturing for him to sit down. "We have a community relations problem." Sterling's expression immediately became serious. "What kind of problem?" "People are worried that our business partnership means Luna's is abandoning its community roots." Harper showed him the note she'd received, then recounted several customer interactions from the day. Sterling listened carefully, his face growing more concerned with each detail. "This is exactly what I was trying to avoid," he said when she finished. "I never wanted our partnership to create problems for your relationship with the community. I know that, but people are nervous about change, especially when it involves outside money. What can we do to reassure them?" Harper had been thinking about this all day. "I think we need to be completely transparent about what we're doing and why." "What does that look like?" Sterling leaned forward, clearly ready to support whatever approach she thought best. "A community meeting. Open discussion about the partnership, our goals, and how we plan to maintain Luna's community character while expanding services." "That makes sense. When and where?" "Here at the cafe. This Thursday evening. We'll provide coffee and pastries, create a comfortable environment for honest conversation." "Should I prepare a presentation about Zenith Tech and our partnership goals?" Harper considered this. "Yes, but let me lead the discussion. People need to hear from me that this partnership was my choice and serves my business goals. Of course, this is your cafe and your community." Harper felt some of her anxiety ease. Sterling's immediate understanding of her leadership role meant everything to her. "There's something else we need to discuss," she continued. "What's that?" "How we present our personal relationship to the community." Sterling's expression became thoughtful. "What are you comfortable with?" Harper had wrestled with this question extensively. "I think we should be honest, but not make it the focus. People should understand that we care about each other, but the business partnership stands on its own merit." "That sounds perfect." "The last thing we want is for people to think business decisions are being driven by romantic feelings." "Exactly." Harper felt grateful for his understanding. "Our relationship shouldn't overshadow the professional benefits of this partnership. What if people ask directly about our personal involvement? Then we tell them the truth, that we've become close friends who share similar values about community and business. We're exploring what that might mean for our future, but the partnership would be beneficial regardless of personal considerations." Sterling nodded approvingly. Honest, straightforward, and focused on what matters most to the community. "Right?" "And Sterling?" "Yes. During the meeting, follow my lead. Let me address concerns first, then provide supporting information when I ask for it." "Absolutely. This is your community and your reputation at stake." Harper felt a surge of affection for him. Most men in his position would want to take charge, but Sterling seemed genuinely committed to supporting her leadership. "There's one more thing," she said, feeling suddenly vulnerable. "What?" "After this meeting, depending on how it goes, we'll know whether our partnership can work in this community. If it can't," Sterling reached across the table and took her hand. "If it can't, then we'll find other ways to support each other's goals. But Harper, I have complete confidence in your ability to handle this situation." "How can you be so sure?" "Because I've watched you work with people. You listen carefully. You respond thoughtfully, and you genuinely care about finding solutions that benefit everyone. Those are exactly the skills needed for this conversation." Harper squeezed his hand, drawing strength from his confidence in her. "Thank you. I needed to hear that. You're going to be brilliant Thursday night, and whatever questions or concerns people raise, we'll address them together." Harper looked around the cafe, at the community bulletin board covered with local announcements, at the photos documenting decades of neighborhood connections, at the mismatched furniture that had welcomed thousands of conversations. "This place means everything to me," she said quietly. I know. And that's exactly why our partnership is going to work. You'll never let anything threaten what your family built here. Sterling lifted her hand and kissed it gently. And I'll never ask you to. Harper felt her heart swell with emotion. In that moment, she knew with absolute certainty that Sterling Hayes understood not just her business goals, but her deepest values and commitments. Thursday night couldn't come soon enough. Thursday evening arrived with unseasonably warm weather that felt like a good omen. Harper had spent the day preparing, arranging chairs in a circle, brewing multiple pots of coffee, setting out an impressive spread of pastries from 3 different local suppliers. By 7 o'clock, Luna's Café was fuller than it had been since the Christmas concert 6 months ago. Harper recognized faces from every corner of Milbrook's community: business owners, retirees, families with teenagers, even a few college students home for the week. Sterling sat in the back corner, having arrived early to help with setup, but understanding his role was to support, not lead. "Thank you all for coming," Harper began, standing near the counter where everyone could see her. "I called this meeting because I want to be completely transparent about the changes happening at Luna's Café." The room settled into attentive silence. 2 weeks ago, I entered into a business partnership with Zenith Tech, a software company owned by Sterling Hayes. Harper gestured towards Sterling, who nodded politely but remained seated. "This partnership involves hosting corporate meetings and events here at the cafe, which provides additional revenue that allows me to expand evening services and hire part-time staff." Frank Morrison, who owned the hardware store, raised his hand. "Is this partnership going to change the cafe's atmosphere or pricing for regular customers?" "Absolutely not," Harper said firmly. "Regular menu prices remain unchanged. Daily operations continue exactly as before, and community events like book club and acoustic nights will continue as scheduled." "What about availability?" asked Sarah Miller, no relation to Sterling. "Will regular customers be displaced by corporate events?" "Corporate events are scheduled during specific time frames that don't conflict with regular operating hours. Most happen either early morning or evening, when the cafe would normally be closed to individual customers." Mrs. Patterson spoke up from her usual table. "What's this man's connection to our community? Why should we trust an outsider with our gathering place?" Harper had expected this question and prepared carefully for it. "Sterling, would you like to address that?" Sterling stood up slowly, his expression respectful and humble. "Mrs. Patterson, I understand your concern. I moved to Milbrook 2 months ago because I was looking for a community where business success could contribute to local prosperity instead of extracting from it." He paused, making eye contact with several people around the room. "My father owned a small business in Oregon, Hayes's Hardware. He taught me that the best businesses become part of the community fabric, supporting local suppliers, hiring local workers, and investing in long-term relationships rather than short-term profit." Frank Morrison leaned forward with interest. "What happened to your father's business? When Dad retired, he made sure the store was sold to someone who would maintain its community focus. The traditions he built over 30 years continue today." Several people nodded approvingly at this. "That's exactly what I'm trying to do here," Sterling continued. "Use business success to support what already works well, rather than changing it." "But why Milbrook specifically?" Sarah Miller asked. "What drew you to our town?" Sterling's eyes briefly met Harper's before he answered. "I researched dozens of small Vermont communities. Milbrook stood out because of its balance, close enough to Burlington for business purposes, but small enough that neighbors still know each other's names. And because," he added with a slight smile, "Luna's Café serves the best cortado I've ever had." This drew chuckles from several people, and Harper felt some of the tension in the room ease. Tom Wheeler, who ran the local bookstore, raised his hand. "How do we know this partnership won't lead to bigger changes, property development, chain stores, that kind of thing?" Harper stepped forward to answer this one. Because I own Luna's Café outright, and I have zero interest in selling or franchising. This partnership provides financial stability that actually makes it easier for me to resist outside pressure for unwanted changes. Sterling nodded. And Zenith Tech's business model is specifically designed to support existing local businesses rather than replace them. We're not interested in developing property or opening competing ventures. What about hiring? Frank asked. Will this create jobs for local people? Harper smiled. I'm already looking for part-time evening staff, and if the partnership continues to grow, I'll need additional help with catering and event coordination. All local hiring, Sterling added. We believe the best way to serve clients is through staff who understand and represent the community. Mrs. Patterson looked thoughtful. You, young man, what's your long-term plan for Milbrook? Sterling considered this carefully. To become a genuine community member rather than just a resident, to use my business resources to support local economic development, and to learn from people like Harper who understand how to balance growth with preservation of community character. That's a pretty answer, Mrs. Patterson said. But what does it mean practically? It means shopping at local businesses instead of ordering everything online. It means volunteering for community events and organizations. It means making decisions based on what benefits Milbrook long-term, not just what's convenient for me. Harper felt a surge of pride. Sterling was handling these questions with exactly the right tone. Humble but confident, specific but not defensive. Are there other questions about the business partnership? Harper asked. Sarah Miller raised her hand again. What about your personal relationship? Are business decisions being influenced by romantic feelings? Harper had dreaded this question, but knew it needed to be addressed directly. Sterling and I have become close friends through our professional collaboration. We share similar values about community and business ethics, and we're exploring what that might mean personally. She paused, making sure she had everyone's attention. But this partnership would be beneficial to Luna's Café, regardless of any personal considerations. I evaluated it purely on business merit, and that's how it should be judged. Sterling nodded. Our business relationship exists independently of our personal relationship. If we decided tomorrow that we weren't compatible romantically, the partnership would continue because it serves both of our professional goals. Harper appreciated his support while maintaining her leadership of the conversation. Any other concerns? Harper asked. The room was quiet for a moment, then Frank Morrison spoke up. I have to say, this all sounds pretty reasonable. You've been straight with us about your plans, and that young man seems to understand what we value here. Mrs. Patterson nodded slowly. I was suspicious of outside money, but if Harper thinks this partnership serves the cafe's mission, I'm willing to give it a chance. Other voices murmured agreement around the room. Harper felt relief wash over her. Thank you all for your questions and your openness. The success of this partnership depends on community support, and I'm grateful for your willingness to listen. Sterling stood again. If anyone has additional questions or concerns in the coming weeks, please don't hesitate to approach either of us. We want this to work well for everyone. As people began to leave, many stopped to shake hands with Sterling or offer Harper words of support. The evening had gone better than Harper had dared to hope. When the last community member had left, Harper and Sterling began cleaning up in comfortable silence. That went well, Sterling said, stacking chairs. Better than well. Harper felt almost giddy with relief. I think we actually have community buy-in. You were incredible tonight. The way you handled every question, maintained leadership while including me appropriately. It was perfect. Harper paused in her cleanup. Thank you for understanding that this had to be my conversation to lead. Of course. This is your community and your reputation. I'm just grateful to be included. Harper looked around the cafe, seeing it through new eyes. The partnership would work, the community would support it, and she and Sterling could build something beautiful together without sacrificing what mattered most. "Sterling," she said, walking over to where he was wiping down tables. "Yes, I love you." Sterling dropped his cloth and turned to face her fully. "I love you too, Harper. More than I thought I could love anyone." Harper smiled, feeling happier than she had in years. "Then let's build that future we talked about. Together." Sterling pulled her into his arms, and Harper knew they'd found something worth fighting for. 3 weeks after the community meeting, Harper could hardly believe the transformation in her daily routine. Luna's cafe was busier than ever, but in the best possible way. The part-time evening staff she'd hired, Jenny Olson, a college student studying hospitality management, had proven to be a perfect addition. Jenny's enthusiasm for customer service and natural ability to learn quickly had allowed Harper to focus on the expanded catering responsibilities that came with Zenith Tech's regular events. More importantly, the community seemed genuinely excited about the changes. Several other local businesses had approached Harper about hosting their own evening meetings, and she'd received 3 inquiries from companies in Burlington interested in similar arrangements. But tonight felt different. Sterling had been unusually quiet during their evening work session, occasionally glancing at Harper with an expression she couldn't quite read. "You seem distracted," Harper said, looking up from tomorrow's catering prep list. "Everything okay?" Sterling closed his laptop and gave her his full attention. "Actually, I have something important to tell you." Harper felt a flutter of nervousness. Good important or concerning important? Hopefully good. Sterling smiled. "I've made a final decision about the acquisition offer." Harper's heart rate increased. "And I'm turning it down, officially and permanently." Relief flooded through Harper so intensely it surprised her. "Really? Really? I spent the last 3 weeks evaluating every angle, and I realized the acquisition would require me to give up everything that's made the past 2 months meaningful." "What do you mean?" "If I sold Zenith Tech, I'd have financial security but no purpose. I'd have freedom but no community connections. I'd have time but no reason to get up in the morning." Harper felt her eyes growing warm. "Sterling. But keeping the company means I can continue building something that matters. Supporting local businesses, creating jobs in communities like Milbrook, maintaining the values my father taught me about business being a force for good. That sounds like exactly the right decision for you. It feels right. But Harper, there's something else." "What?" "I've been thinking about how to expand Zenith Tech's community partnership model. What if we could replicate what we've built here in other small towns across New England?" Harper leaned forward with interest. "What would that look like? Local cafes and businesses becoming regional hubs for companies that want authentic community connections. Small towns getting sustainable revenue streams that don't compromise their character. Rural areas becoming attractive to remote workers and small businesses. That's an incredible vision. It's a vision I can only achieve with the right partners. People who understand both business development and community preservation." Sterling paused, and Harper sensed he was building towards something significant. "Harper," he continued, "I'd like to ask you to consider becoming Zenith Tech's Director of Community Partnerships." Harper blinked. "What?" "It would be a formal position with your own budget and staff. You'd identify communities ready for this kind of development, establish relationships with local business owners, and oversee the implementation of partnership programs." Harper tried to process this unexpected offer. "That sounds like an incredible opportunity. But what about Luna's? You'd maintain complete ownership and operational control of the cafe. This position would be part-time initially, maybe 2 days a week of travel, with the rest of your time focused here." Harper felt excitement building. "You're serious about this?" "Completely serious." You've proven you understand how to balance business growth with community values. That's exactly the expertise Zenith Tech needs to expand responsibly. Harper stood up and walked to the window, looking out at Main Street's familiar storefronts. The idea of helping other communities achieve what Milbrook was experiencing was incredibly appealing. What kind of communities would we target, she asked. Towns similar to Milbrook, places with strong local character but struggling economically. Communities that want development, but not at the expense of what makes them special. Harper turned back to face him. This isn't just about business expansion, is it? Sterling shook his head. It's about proving that business success and community health can support each other. It's about creating a model that other companies can follow. And personally, it means we'd be building something together that's bigger than either of us could create alone. Harper felt her heart racing. The professional opportunity was exciting, but the chance to work closely with Sterling on something they both cared about was even more compelling. "There's one more thing," Sterling said, his voice becoming softer. "Yes, if you accept this position, we'd be business partners in the most complete sense. Equal stakes in building something meaningful together." Harper looked into his eyes, seeing love and respect and genuine partnership there. "Sterling," she said slowly, "are you asking me to be your business partner and your life partner?" Sterling stood up and walked over to her. "I'm asking if you'd be willing to build a future with me. In business, in love, in service to communities like the one that brought us together." Harper felt tears prick her eyes. "That's the most beautiful proposal I've ever heard. Is that a yes?" Harper reached up and touched his face gently. "That's an absolutely yes. To the business partnership, to the life partnership, to building something beautiful together." Sterling's smile was radiant. "Really, really?" Harper stood on her tiptoes and kissed him. "I love you, Sterling Hayes, and I love the future we're going to create." When they broke apart, both were laughing and crying simultaneously. "So," Sterling said, still holding her close, "should we celebrate with coffee?" Harper laughed. "I can think of something better than coffee." "What's that?" Sterling raised an eyebrow hopefully. "Planning our first community partnership site visit. I have some ideas about where we should start." Sterling kissed her forehead. "Have I mentioned that I love your priorities?" Harper grinned. "You're about to learn all about my priorities, partner. Business and personal. I can't wait," Sterling said, and kissed her again. Outside, the streetlights cast gentle circles of light on Main Street, illuminating a community ready for growth without losing its heart. Inside Luna's Café, two people who'd found each other over midnight coffee were planning a future that would honor the past while creating hope for dozens of small towns across New England. It was, Harper thought, exactly what her great-grandmother would have wanted. 6 weeks into their business partnership, Harper could barely recognize her own life. Luna's Café had transformed from a struggling small business into the unofficial hub of Milbrook's economic revitalization. The numbers spoke for themselves. Evening revenue had increased 92%, morning sales were up 35% from increased foot traffic, and Harper had hired 2 additional part-time staff members just to keep up with demand. But success brought complications she hadn't anticipated. Working closely with Sterling every day had intensified their attraction beyond anything Harper had experienced before. The professional efficiency they'd developed masked an underlying current of awareness that made her pulse quicken every time he walked into the cafe. Tonight's Zenith Tech quarterly review meeting had gone flawlessly. 15 clients gathered around the tables Harper had arranged in the main dining area, sampling her expanded catering menu, while Sterling presented quarterly security analytics and upcoming software developments. Harper had orchestrated every detail, from the locally sourced breakfast pastries to the seamless technology setup that made Luna's Cafe feel like a high-end conference facility without losing its intimate character. As the last client left, praising both the professional presentation and the exceptional hospitality, Harper began clearing tables with the satisfaction of another successful event. "That was incredible," Sterling said, approaching with his laptop bag. The clients were genuinely impressed with both the venue and the service. Harper felt a familiar flutter at his praise. She'd stopped pretending his approval didn't matter to her, but the intensity of her reaction still caught her off guard. "The catering worked perfectly," she said, stacking plates efficiently. Jenny Olsen's suggestion about the individual coffee service during the presentation was brilliant. Sterling began folding the portable presentation screen they'd purchased specifically for these events. "You've created something really special here, Harper. This isn't just a cafe anymore. It's a complete hospitality experience." Harper paused in her cleanup, struck by the weight of what they'd accomplished together. 6 weeks ago, she'd been worried about covering basic expenses. Now she was operating a thriving business that served both her community and Sterling's professional needs. But the success created pressure she hadn't expected. Every interaction with Sterling felt charged with possibility and risk in equal measure. "We make a good team," Sterling continued, and Harper caught something in his voice that made her look up. He was watching her with an expression that went far beyond professional appreciation. There was affection there, and desire, and something deeper that made her breath catch. "Yes," Harper said quietly, "we do." They stood in the empty cafe surrounded by the evidence of their successful collaboration, and Harper felt the air between them shift into something electric. "Harper," Sterling said, taking a step closer, "I need to tell you something." Harper's heart rate spiked. "What?" "These past 6 weeks, working with you every day, seeing how brilliant you are at everything you touch. I can't stop thinking about kissing you again." Harper felt heat flood through her body. "Sterling, I know we agreed to take things slowly, but Harper, I'm losing my mind trying to pretend I don't want to be with you every moment of every day." Harper's rational mind reminded her of all the reasons they needed to maintain professional boundaries. Their business partnership was too important to risk. The community was still adjusting to their arrangement. Moving too fast could complicate everything they'd built. But her heart was racing, and Sterling was close enough that she could see the desire in his eyes, and all her careful reasoning felt suddenly irrelevant. "I want that too," she whispered. Sterling closed the remaining distance between them. "Really, really? But Sterling, I'm scared." "Of what?" "Of ruining this." Harper gestured around the cafe. "Of risking what we've built for something that might not work." Sterling reached up and touched her face gently. "What if it does work? What if we're perfect together, professionally and personally?" Harper leaned into his touch, her resolve weakening. "What if we're not? Then we figure it out like adults." "But Harper, I can't keep pretending I don't love you." Harper's eyes widened. "You love me. I'm completely in love with you. Your intelligence, your strength, your incredible heart, the way you make everyone around you feel valued and important." Harper felt tears prick her eyes. "Sterling, I love you too. So much it terrifies me." Sterling's smile was radiant. "Then why are we fighting this?" "Because," Harper said, struggling to maintain her last thread of caution, "if we cross this line and it doesn't work out, we could lose everything. Or we could gain everything," Sterling said softly. "Harper, the business partnership works because we respect and trust each other. Those same qualities will make our personal relationship work too." Harper looked into his eyes. Seeing sincerity and hope and love so genuine, it took her breath away. "What are you suggesting?" she asked. "I'm suggesting we stop being afraid of happiness. I'm suggesting we trust what we feel and see where it leads us." Harper felt her defenses crumbling. "And if the community disapproves, if mixing business and personal creates problems, then we handle those challenges together like we've handled everything else." Harper realized she was out of rational objections. The truth was, she wanted Sterling with an intensity that made professional caution feel like a luxury she could no longer afford. "Sterling," she said, making a decision that both thrilled and terrified her. "Yes, kiss me, now, before I lose my courage." Sterling's answer was to pull her into his arms and kiss her with 6 weeks of accumulated longing. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard and laughing. "Well," Harper said, resting her forehead against his. "I guess we're doing this." "I guess we are," Sterling agreed. "Any regrets?" Harper looked around the cafe, at the evidence of their successful partnership, at the community bulletin board covered with announcements of local events they'd helped support, at the photos documenting her family's legacy that Sterling had learned to honor. "None whatsoever," she said, and kissed him again. But as they held each other in the dim light of Luna's cafe, Harper couldn't shake the feeling that they'd just crossed a line that would change everything between them. She only hoped it would change things for the better. 2 weeks later, Harper discovered that mixing business with pleasure was more complicated than either of them had anticipated. The problem wasn't their relationship. If anything, being together romantically had made their professional collaboration even more effective. They understood each other's rhythms, anticipated each other's needs, and communicated with an ease that made complex events feel effortless. The problem was everyone else's reaction to their relationship. The morning started normally enough. Harper was preparing for Zenith Tech's monthly client breakfast when her phone rang. The caller ID showed a number she didn't recognize. "Luna's Cafe, this is Harper, Ms. Clark. This is Janet Wilson from Peterson and Associates. We're representing Consolidated Properties in their acquisition of the Morrison estate." Harper's stomach dropped. The Morrison estate was where Sterling lived. "How can I help you?" Harper asked, trying to keep her voice neutral. "We understand you've entered into a business arrangement with the current tenant. We wanted to give you advance notice that the property sale will be completed within 30 days, and the new owners may not honor existing tenant agreements." Harper felt the ground shift beneath her feet. "What does that mean for current tenants?" "Mr. Hayes will need to vacate the property or negotiate new terms with the incoming owners. We thought you should know since this might affect your business arrangements." Harper thanked the caller and hung up, her mind racing. Sterling hadn't mentioned anything about the Morrison estate being sold. Given their relationship, this seemed like something he would have shared with her, unless he didn't know, or unless he'd chosen not to tell her. Harper spent the morning distracted, serving customers and preparing for the afternoon client event while worry gnawed at her. When Sterling arrived early for setup, she decided to address the situation directly. "Sterling, I need to ask you about something." "Of course. What's on your mind?" "I got a call this morning about the Morrison estate being sold. The new owners might not honor your lease agreement." Sterling's expression immediately became guarded. "You got a call about that? From the lawyer handling the sale? They thought I should know, since it might affect our business arrangement." Sterling set down the presentation materials he'd been carrying. "Harper, I was going to tell you about this." Harper felt hurt, beginning to mix with her worry. "How long have you known?" "About a week. But I didn't want to worry you until I knew more about the timeline and options." Harper crossed her arms. "That seems like the kind of information partners share with each other immediately." "You're right. I should have told you as soon as I knew." "Why didn't you?" Harper's voice was sharper than she'd intended. Sterling ran his hand through his hair, a gesture she'd learned indicated stress. "Because I didn't want this to feel like another crisis we had to solve together. I wanted to handle it independently and then present you with solutions rather than problems." Harper felt her frustration rising. "Sterling, that's exactly the kind of thinking that makes me feel excluded from decisions that affect both of us. That wasn't my intention at all." "Maybe not, but that's the result." Harper began pacing, her energy too agitated for standing still. We're supposed to be partners in business and in life, but you're still making unilateral decisions about things that impact our relationship. Sterling's expression became defensive. I was trying to protect you from unnecessary stress. I don't need protection from stress. Harper's voice rose slightly. I need honesty and inclusion in decisions that affect our partnership. You're right, Sterling said, his tone becoming more conciliatory. I made a mistake by not telling you immediately. This isn't just about timing, Sterling. Harper stopped pacing and faced him directly. This is about trust and communication patterns that concern me. What do you mean? I mean, this is the second time you've made significant decisions without consulting me. First, the acquisition offer, now the housing situation. When do I get to be a full partner instead of someone you protect from difficult information? Sterling's face showed genuine surprise. Harper, I've never thought of you as someone who needs protection. You're the strongest person I know. Then why do you keep handling major decisions alone instead of involving me in the process? Sterling was quiet for a long moment, clearly processing her question seriously. You're absolutely right, he said finally. I've been falling back on old patterns of trying to solve everything independently before involving other people. Harper felt some of her anger deflating, but the hurt remained. Those patterns don't work in a partnership, Sterling. They make me feel like an employee rather than an equal. That's the last thing I want. Sterling approached her slowly. Harper, you are my equal in every way. I'm sorry I've made you feel otherwise. Harper studied his face, seeing genuine remorse there. What are your options with the housing situation? I can look for another rental property in Milbrook, or I can make an offer to purchase the Morrison estate myself. Purchase it. Harper blinked. You can afford to buy that place? Sterling nodded. The estate is expensive, but it's within my financial range. The question is whether it makes sense given my long-term plans for staying in Milbrook. What are your long-term plans? Sterling met her eyes directly. That depends partly on whether you want me to stay in Milbrook long-term. Harper felt her heart skip. Are you asking what I think you're asking? I'm asking whether you see our relationship as something temporary or something that could build toward a shared future. Harper's anger evaporated completely, replaced by a mix of hope and vulnerability. Sterling, that's a conversation we should have together, not a decision you should try to make independently. You're absolutely right. Sterling reached for her hands. Harper, I'm sorry. I've been handling this all wrong. Yes, you have. But I understand why. You do. You've been successful by taking charge of situations and solving problems independently. But partnership requires different skills. What skills? Communication before action. Consultation before decision-making. Trust that your partner can handle difficult information and contribute to solutions. Sterling squeezed her hands gently. Will you help me learn those skills? Harper felt her heart soften completely. Yes, but Sterling, I need you to promise me something. Anything. No more protecting me from information that affects both of us, even if you think you're being considerate. I promise. Complete honesty and immediate communication from now on. Harper searched his face, seeing sincerity and commitment there. Okay. Now let's talk about the housing situation and what options make sense for our future. Our future? Sterling's smile was hopeful. Yes, Harper said, standing on her tiptoes to kiss him softly. Our future. Whatever that looks like, we're going to figure it out together. That evening, after the client event had concluded successfully despite their morning tension, Harper and Sterling sat in the empty cafe, having the most important conversation of their relationship. So, Harper said, stirring honey into her chamomile tea, let's talk about what we both want from this relationship. Sterling looked nervous but determined. Okay, do you want to go first, or should I? You go first. I want to understand your perspective before I share mine. Sterling took a deep breath. I want a life partner, Harper. Someone I can build a future with, personally and professionally. Someone who challenges me to be better while accepting who I am now. Harper felt warmth spread through her chest. That's beautiful. What does that look like practically? It looks like making major decisions together, creating shared goals and working toward them as a team. Supporting each other's individual dreams while building something bigger than either of us could achieve alone. Harper nodded approvingly. And professionally, I want us to be true partners in expanding the community development model we've created here. Equal voices in decision-making, equal credit for successes, equal responsibility for challenges. What about personally? Harper asked, her heart racing slightly. Personally, I want to wake up next to you every morning and fall asleep beside you every night. I want to integrate our lives completely while maintaining our individual identities and goals. Harper felt her eyes growing warm. Sterling, that's exactly what I want too. Really, really. Harper reached across the table and took his hands. I want a partner who respects my independence while being completely committed to our shared life. I want someone who supports my goals without trying to manage them. And what are your goals? Harper had been thinking about this question for weeks. I want to expand Luna's Café into a model for community-centered business development. I want to help other small business owners achieve sustainability while maintaining their values. And I want to honor my family's legacy while creating new traditions. Sterling's smile was radiant. Those goals align perfectly with what I want to build through Zenith Tech. I know. That's what makes this feel so right. Harper paused, gathering courage for the question that had been building in her mind. Sterling, are you ready to talk about specific timeline and commitment? Sterling's expression became serious. Yes, are you? I think so. Harper felt nervous but excited. What would full partnership look like to you? Living together, making financial decisions together, planning our professional futures as a team, eventually marriage and family, if that's what we both want. Harper's heart raced. Marriage and family. Not immediately, Sterling said quickly, but yes, eventually. Is that something you could see yourself wanting? Harper thought about her great-grandmother's marriage, about the partnership her parents had modeled, about the kind of life she dreamed of creating. Yes, she said softly, with you, yes. I can see myself wanting all of that. Sterling's relief was visible. Really, really. But Sterling, I need you to understand something important. What? Even when we're married, even when we're completely integrated personally and professionally, I still need to maintain my independence and decision-making authority over Luna's Café. Sterling nodded immediately. Of course. This cafe is your domain and your legacy. I would never want to change that. And I need us to make major decisions together, even when, especially when, they seem like individual decisions. Absolutely. Harper, I want to be the kind of partner who makes you stronger, not someone who diminishes your autonomy. Harper felt love and gratitude wash over her. That's exactly what I needed to hear. So what are our next steps? Sterling asked. Harper had been considering this carefully. I think we should start by addressing the immediate housing situation. Then we can begin planning our longer-term integration. What do you think about the Morrison estate? Would you be comfortable with me purchasing it? Harper thought about this. It's a beautiful property, and it would give you stability in Milbrook. But Sterling, if you buy a house here, I want to be involved in that decision. How involved? Not financially, unless that's something we decide together later. But I want input on the choice because it affects our future together. Sterling's smile was warm. I'd love your input. Actually, I'd love for you to help me evaluate whether it's the right choice for us. Harper felt her heart swell. For us. She loved the sound of that. There's something else we should discuss, she said. What? If we're moving toward life partnership, we should probably tell our families what's happening. Sterling looked slightly nervous. Are you ready for that? I think so. My parents will want to meet you properly, and your family should know you're serious about someone. I'd love to meet your parents, and yes, my father will definitely want to know about you. Harper reached for his hands again. Sterling, I love you. I love what we're building together, and I love the future we're planning. I love you too, Harper, more than I thought I could love anyone. Harper stood up and walked around the table to him. Then let's stop being cautious and start being committed. Sterling stood too, pulling her into his arms. Are you saying what I think you're saying? I'm saying yes to all of it. Living together, planning together, building a future together. I'm saying yes to us. Sterling kissed her deeply, and Harper felt everything shift into place. Her heart, her future, her sense of possibility. When they broke apart, both were laughing and crying simultaneously. So, Sterling said, still holding her close, should we start looking at houses tomorrow? Harper grinned. We should start planning everything tomorrow, together. I can't wait, Sterling said, and kissed her again. Outside, Main Street was quiet under the gentle glow of streetlights. Inside Luna's Café, two people who had found each other over midnight coffee were planning a future that honored the past while creating something entirely new. It was, Harper thought, exactly what great-grandmother Rose would have wanted. Love that served both the heart and the community. 6 months later, Harper stood in the doorway of Luna's Café, watching the most extraordinary celebration Milbrook had ever witnessed. The transformation still took her breath away, not just of the café, but of everything their partnership had touched. Tonight marked the official launch of the Zenith Tech Community Partnership Program, a model now being implemented across New England. But more than that, it marked the culmination of a love story that had begun with midnight coffee and grown into something that was changing lives across 3 states. The numbers still amazed her every time she reviewed them. Luna's Café revenue had increased 137%. Main Street now housed 8 new businesses, each one locally owned and operated. Local unemployment had dropped from 11% to 4%. Property values had risen modestly, enough to help long-time residents build equity, but not enough to displace them. But the statistics only told part of the story. The real story was in the faces surrounding her tonight. Neighbors who'd found new economic opportunities, young families who could afford to stay in Milbrook instead of leaving for bigger cities, elderly residents who'd watched their community flourish instead of fade into irrelevance. Harper adjusted the microphone Sterling had set up near the counter, her heart racing with anticipation for the evening's events. She wore her great-grandmother's silver bracelet and a dress the exact shade of café latte, details that felt like honoring Rose's legacy while celebrating their future. The café was packed beyond capacity. Folding chairs borrowed from the community center filled every available space. People stood along the walls, sat on the window ledges, and clustered near the doorway. Harper recognized faces from every corner of Milbrook's community. Business owners, retirees, families with teenagers, college students home for winter break, even visitors from other towns who'd heard about their success. Ladies and gentlemen, Harper began, her voice carrying easily through the packed space thanks to the sound system they'd installed for corporate events. Thank you for joining us tonight to celebrate what we've accomplished together as a community. Thunderous applause filled the space, and Harper felt overwhelmed by the warmth reflected in dozens of familiar faces. She spotted Mrs. Patterson in the front row, beaming with pride. Frank Morrison stood near the counter, his expression one of genuine satisfaction. The bookstore owners, Tom and Sarah Wheeler, sat with the new bakery proprietors, all of them representing the ripple effect of economic development that had transformed Main Street. 6 months ago, Many of you had legitimate concerns about changes coming to Milbrook. You worried about losing the character that makes our town special, about outside influence overwhelming local values, about gentrification destroying what generations had built. Harper paused, making direct eye contact with community members who'd questioned the partnership initially. I want to thank you for giving us the chance to prove that growth and preservation can support each other. That business success can strengthen community bonds instead of weakening them. That outside resources can serve local priorities instead of replacing them. More enthusiastic applause, and Harper noticed Sterling standing near the back wall, his expression radiating pride and something else that made her pulse quicken. They'd planned tonight carefully, but she suspected Sterling had additional surprises in store. Tonight, I'm excited to share specific results from our first 6 months of partnership, Harper continued, pulling out her prepared notes, though she'd memorized every detail. Luna's Cafe has hired 6 part-time employees, all local residents ranging in age from 16 to 64. We've contracted with 14 area suppliers, keeping nearly every dollar of our expanded revenue within 30 miles of Milbrook. Our evening programming now serves an average of 42 customers per night, compared to 6 months ago. Enthusiastic cheers greeted this news, and Harper felt the energy in the room building. Zenith Tech has relocated their Northeast Regional headquarters to the renovated Morrison building on Church Street, creating 18 full-time positions with competitive salaries, comprehensive benefits, and profit-sharing programs. They've also contracted with 6 local service providers for everything from office cleaning to graphic design. Frank Morrison called out from the crowd, and they actually hire locally instead of importing workers from outside. Exactly right, Frank. Harper grinned, feeling the community's satisfaction with their success. 63% of Zenith Tech's new hires are Milbrook residents or people who moved here specifically for these opportunities. The remaining 37% are specialists who've integrated beautifully into our community and are contributing to local economic activity. But the success extends far beyond our individual businesses, Harper continued, her voice growing stronger. The partnership model we've developed here is now being implemented in Brattleboro, Woodstock, Manchester, and 2 communities in New Hampshire. Each town is creating its own version that honors local character while generating sustainable economic development. Harper looked around the room, seeing faces that had become family over the past months. Tom Wheeler's bookstore now hosts 3 author events per month and has expanded into rare book sales. Sarah Miller's quilting shop has become a destination for textile artists from across Vermont. The new bakery is already planning a second location. The hardware store is considering adding a garden center section. We've proven that small towns don't have to choose between economic survival and cultural preservation. We can have both when we work together with respect for what came before and vision for what's possible. The applause was sustained now, and Harper felt tears threatening as she looked at the community that had embraced their vision so completely. But tonight isn't just about celebrating our business success. It's about celebrating the relationships that made this success possible, the trust that allowed us to try something new, the patience that gave us time to prove our approach, the wisdom that helped us avoid the mistakes other communities have made during development processes. Harper paused, gathering courage for what came next. Most importantly, tonight is about celebrating the love that brought Sterling Hayes and me together, and the partnership that has made all of this possible. Sterling stepped forward from the back of the room, and Harper felt her pulse quicken dramatically. They'd planned this moment carefully, but she still felt nervous about what was coming. "I'd like Sterling to share some thoughts about our future plans," Harper said, extending the microphone toward him with hands that weren't entirely steady. Sterling accepted the microphone, and Harper noticed his hands were trembling slightly too. "Good," she thought. This moment was too important for either of them to take lightly. "Thank you, Harper." Sterling's voice was warm but carried emotion that made Harper's heart race. 6 months ago, I came to Milbrook as an outsider, looking for something I couldn't quite define. I was successful professionally, but struggling personally. I had financial security, but no sense of purpose. I had freedom, but no real connections. Sterling paused, scanning the faces in the crowded cafe. I found what I was missing in this cafe, in this community, and most importantly, in the remarkable woman who created this space where business and belonging intersect. Harper felt heat rise in her cheeks as Sterling continued, his voice growing more confident. "Harper Clark has taught me that true success means building something that serves not just yourself, but generations who come after you. She's shown me that the strongest leaders are those who lift others up while maintaining their own vision and values. She's demonstrated that love and business can support each other when both are grounded in authentic service to community." Harper's eyes began to well with tears as she sensed where this was leading. What we've built here proves that the best partnerships honor each person's individual strengths while creating something bigger than either could achieve alone. Harper has never needed rescuing or managing. She's needed a true partner who could match her vision, support her goals, and contribute to her dreams without diminishing them. Sterling closed his laptop and set it aside, giving Harper his complete attention, which is why I want to ask Harper something important in front of the community that brought us together, in the space where we first discovered what we could build as a team. The cafe fell completely silent, and Harper felt her heart hammering against her ribs. Every face in the room was focused on them, expressions ranging from anticipation to delight to barely contained excitement. Sterling crossed the room to stand directly in front of her, then dropped to one knee. A collective gasp rose from the assembled crowd, followed by whispers of excitement and approval. "Harper Elaine Clark," Sterling said, his voice carrying clearly through the hushed space. "You've made me want to be the best version of myself. You've shown me how to build a life that honors the past while creating hope for the future. You've taught me that true partnership means supporting each other's dreams while creating new dreams together." Harper's hands flew to her mouth as Sterling pulled out a small velvet box and opened it to reveal a stunning ring. The stone was a beautiful solitaire diamond surrounded by smaller stones that caught the warm cafe lighting like stars. But Harper noticed immediately that the band was engraved with a delicate pattern that looked familiar. "Will you marry me?" Sterling continued, his voice strong despite the emotion Harper could see in his eyes. "Will you be my partner in all the ways that matter? In love, in business, in service to communities like the one that brought us together? Will you help me spend the rest of my life building something beautiful and meaningful and lasting?" Harper stared at the ring, noting that the engraved pattern matched the design on her great-grandmother's silver bracelet. Sterling had somehow incorporated Rose's legacy into this moment, making it perfect in ways Harper couldn't have imagined. But more than the ring, she was struck by the absolute appropriateness of this moment. Sterling was proposing in the space that had brought them together, surrounded by the community they'd learned to serve, honoring the legacy that defined her while promising a future they'd create as equals. "Yes," Harper whispered, her voice barely audible in the silent cafe, then louder, with joy that seemed to fill the entire space. "Yes, of course, yes, yes, to all of it." The cafe erupted in cheers and applause as Sterling slipped the ring onto her finger and stood to kiss her deeply. The sound was deafening, clapping, whistling, cheering, and the kind of celebration that small communities reserve for their most beloved members. When they broke apart, both laughing and crying simultaneously, the celebration continued around them with congratulations, embraces, and the joyful noise of a community celebrating authentic love. Mrs. Patterson approached first, her eyes bright with tears she wasn't bothering to hide. "Your great-grandmother would be so proud, honey." This is exactly the kind of love story she believed coffee could create. Two people finding each other through service to something bigger than themselves. Harper hugged the older woman tightly, breathing in her familiar scent of lavender and determination. "Thank you for giving us a chance when you weren't sure about the changes," Harper said. "Your support meant everything to our success. I'm glad I was wrong to worry." "Mrs. Patterson replied, patting Harper's cheek gently. "You two have given this community something we'd almost given up on. Hope for a future that's better than our past, without abandoning what makes us who we are." Frank Morrison was next, approaching with his wife Eleanor and shaking Sterling's hand with genuine enthusiasm. "Welcome to the family, son. You've proven yourself to be exactly the kind of partner our Harper deserves. Someone who supports without controlling, who contributes without dominating." "Thank you, Frank." "That means everything to me," Sterling replied, his voice still slightly unsteady with emotion. Eleanor Morrison hugged Harper warmly. "We've watched you grow up in this cafe, dear. Seeing you find love and success here feels like the perfect continuation of your family's story." As friends and neighbors continued offering congratulations, Harper noticed her parents approaching through the crowd. They'd driven up from Massachusetts specifically for tonight, though Harper hadn't been sure they'd arrive in time for the celebration. Elaine Clark wrapped her daughter in a fierce embrace that smelled like the vanilla perfume she'd worn Harper's entire life. "Honey, your father and I are so happy for you. Sterling is a good man who clearly adores you, but more importantly, he respects you." Harper's father, Michael, embraced Sterling warmly. "You take good care of our daughter," he said, "and you remember she doesn't need taking care of, she needs supporting. There's a big difference." Sterling nodded seriously, understanding the weight of what Harper's father was saying. "I understand the difference, sir, and I promise to spend every day earning the privilege of being her partner in every sense of the word." Michael studied Sterling's face for a moment, then broke into the warm smile that had always been Harper's favorite sight in the world. "Then welcome to our family, son. We're proud to have you." Harper felt her heart swell with love and gratitude as she watched the two most important men in her life embrace. About an hour into the celebration, as the initial excitement settled into warm conversation and shared stories, Sterling's father arrived from Oregon. David Hayes had flown in secretly to witness the proposal, coordinating with Harper's parents to surprise both of them. David Hayes was a smaller, graying version of Sterling, with the same thoughtful eyes and gentle manner that had first attracted Harper to his son. "Harper," he said, taking her hands in both of his after embracing Sterling emotionally. "Sterling has told me so much about you and your family's cafe. I can see why he fell in love, with you and with this place." "Mr. Hayes," Harper said, "it's wonderful to finally meet you in person. Sterling talks about you constantly. Please, call me David. We're family now." David looked around the cafe with obvious appreciation, his gaze lingering on the photographs documenting decades of community history. "This reminds me of my old hardware store, the way neighbors become friends, the way business becomes community service, the way success gets measured in relationships rather than just revenue." "That's exactly what your son understood about Luna's Cafe," Harper said. "He saw what we were trying to preserve and found ways to strengthen it instead of changing it." "You've both built something special here," David said, his voice carrying the quiet satisfaction of someone who understood the value of community-centered business, something that will last beyond your lifetimes. As the evening continued, Harper found quiet moments to appreciate specific details that made tonight perfect in ways she couldn't have orchestrated. Jenny Olson had coordinated the catering flawlessly, working with the new bakery and two other local businesses to create a spread that honored both Harper's family heritage and their adopted Vermont community. Traditional wedding cookies sat alongside maple cream pastries, representing the beautiful blending of family traditions that characterized their relationship. The local high school jazz ensemble provided music, playing soft instrumental versions of classic love songs that created perfect atmosphere without overwhelming conversation. Several students Harper recognized from their weekend jobs at local businesses were among the musicians, representing the next generation that would inherit the community they were building. The walls displayed new photographs documenting the past 6 months, ribbon cuttings for new businesses, community meetings where development plans were discussed, successful events that had brought neighbors together. The visual story showed positive change happening gradually and inclusively. Most importantly, great-grandmother Rose's original recipes were prominently featured in tonight's menu, prepared according to handwritten cards that Harper had framed and displayed near the counter. The continuity between past and future felt perfect and intentional. Around 10 o'clock, as the celebration began winding down but showed no signs of ending soon, Harper and Sterling found themselves alone for a few minutes in the kitchen while Jenny organized the remaining food service. "How do you feel?" Sterling asked, wrapping his arms around her from behind as she reviewed the evening's success. "Happy, overwhelmed, grateful. Like everything in my life just clicked into place." Harper leaned back against him, feeling his steady heartbeat against her shoulder. "How do you feel? Like the luckiest person alive. Like I understand for the first time what it means to be exactly where you belong." Sterling kissed her neck softly. "Harper, this is exactly how I imagined our engagement would feel." "Really?" Harper turned in his arms to face him. "You imagined this specific scenario?" "I imagined being surrounded by community when we took this step. I imagined celebrating what we'd built together rather than just what we felt for each other individually. I imagined honoring your family's legacy while planning our shared future." Harper studied his face, seeing the sincerity that had drawn her to him from their very first conversation. "Have I told you today that I love you?" she asked, reaching up to touch his cheek. "Only about 6 times. But I don't mind hearing it again. I love you, Sterling Hayes. I love what we've created together, and I love the future we're going to build. I love that you proposed in front of our community instead of in some private romantic setting. I love that you incorporated great-grandmother's bracelet design into the ring. I love that your father flew across the country to be here. I love everything about tonight. I love you too, Harper Clark. Soon to be Harper Hayes, if you want." Harper considered this, twisting the engagement ring on her finger and marveling at how perfectly it fit. "Actually, I was thinking Harper Clark Hayes. I want to honor both our families and show that marriage can mean addition rather than replacement." "That's perfect," Sterling said, kissing her forehead gently. "Absolutely perfect. It represents everything we believe about partnership." They returned to the main cafe area to find the celebration still going strong. Several community members had begun sharing stories about positive changes they'd experienced over the past 6 months. Tom Wheeler stood near the counter, addressing the room with Sarah by his side. "Harper, Sterling, I want everyone to hear what your partnership has meant to our bookstore. 6 months ago, we were considering closing. Tonight, we are planning to expand our rare book collection and host monthly literary events. The economic development you've generated has given us a sustainable future we didn't think was possible." Sarah nodded enthusiastically. "And it's not just the direct business benefits. The sense of community optimism has brought new energy to everything we do. People are investing in their businesses again instead of just trying to survive." Margaret Foster, who'd opened the new bakery 3 months earlier, spoke up from her table near the window. "I moved to Milbrook specifically because of the economic opportunity you two created. But what's kept me here is the community support and the feeling that we're all building something together rather than competing against each other." Frank Morrison raised his coffee cup from his spot near the counter to Harper and Sterling for proving that the best kind of development strengthens what already works, instead of replacing it with something generic. The toast was echoed throughout the cafe, with dozens of voices expressing variations of gratitude and celebration. Harper felt overwhelmed by the community response, but also deeply satisfied. This was exactly what she'd hoped their partnership could achieve: economic development that served community values rather than undermining them. After the final guests departed around 11:30, Harper and Sterling began cleanup with help from Jenny and the other part-time staff who'd stayed to assist. As they worked, Harper reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. 10 months ago, she'd been struggling to pay basic expenses, worried about the cafe's future, uncertain whether she could maintain her great-grandmother's legacy while adapting to modern economic realities. Tonight, she was engaged to the love of her life, operating a thriving business that served as a model for sustainable community development across New England, and planning a future that honored the past while creating entirely new possibilities. "Sterling," Harper said as they finished washing the last of the serving dishes. "Yes," he replied, hanging up the dish towel with the careful attention to detail she'd learned to love. "Do you remember what you said that first night when I let you into the cafe?" Sterling thought for a moment, his expression becoming nostalgic. "Something about your coffee being the best I'd ever had. Before that, when you were outside with the empty cup, looking like you'd lost something important." Sterling's expression grew more thoughtful. "I said I'd been coming back every night hoping you'd still be open." "Right." Harper smiled, remembering how vulnerable he'd looked in the streetlight. "Do you think you knew then that you were hoping for more than just coffee and workspace?" Sterling set down the cleaning supplies and pulled her close, his arms encircling her waist. "Honestly, I think I knew I was hoping for exactly this. A place to belong, a person to build something meaningful with, a community that felt like home, a purpose that went beyond just personal success. And now I have all of that and more. I have you, and I have us, and I have the certainty that we're going to spend the rest of our lives creating something beautiful together." Harper stood on her tiptoes and kissed him softly, tasting the promise of their shared future. "We have each other," she corrected gently, "and we have a community that believes in what we're building, and we have a future full of possibilities that we couldn't have imagined when this all started." "Speaking of possibilities," Sterling said, his voice taking on a teasing tone that Harper had learned meant he was about to suggest something either romantic or ambitious. "When do you want to start planning this wedding?" Harper laughed, the sound echoing in the empty cafe that had witnessed their entire love story unfold. "How about we start by planning our first joint business development trip to the next community? We can discuss wedding details during the drive to New Hampshire next week. I love that our idea of romantic planning involves spreadsheets and economic development proposals. I love that you think that's romantic instead of boring or inappropriate. With you, Harper, everything is romantic because everything we do serves something bigger than just ourselves." They finished cleanup in comfortable silence, both stealing glances at the engagement ring that caught the light as Harper moved around the familiar space. As they prepared to lock up and head to Sterling's house, soon to be their house once the paperwork was finalized, Harper took one last look around the cafe. The photographs on the walls chronicled 5 decades of community gathering, family celebration, and neighborhood connection. Tonight had added new memories to that legacy while pointing toward a future full of promise and possibility. Sterling followed her gaze around the familiar space, understanding her need to appreciate this moment fully. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, though his tone suggested he already knew. "How perfect this feels, how much great-grandmother Rose would love knowing that her cafe brought us together and then provided the foundation for everything we've built." "She would definitely approve," Sterling agreed. "Coffee bringing people together in their most honest moments. Isn't that what you said she believed?" Harper nodded, feeling Rose's presence strongly in this moment of completion and new beginning. "And I think tonight was pretty honest. You proposed in front of half the town. I cried happy tears in front of Mrs. Patterson, and everyone saw how much we love each other and this community. It doesn't get more honest than that." Sterling reached for her hand, intertwining their fingers so the engagement ring pressed against his palm. "Ready to go home and start planning our future?" he asked. "Ready," Harper said, squeezing his hand and feeling the solid weight of the ring that represented their commitment. She locked the cafe door and tucked the keys into her purse, the familiar routine now carrying additional significance. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities to serve their expanding network of communities, and new steps toward the wedding that would officially unite their lives. But tonight was for savoring the magic of midnight coffee that had grown into lifetime love, community partnership that had flourished into regional economic development, and two hearts that had found their perfect match in service, in business, and in the eternal promise of waking up together every morning with meaningful work and authentic love. As they walked home under Vermont's star-filled sky, their footsteps echoing softly on the familiar sidewalks of Main Street, Harper knew with absolute certainty that this was exactly the beginning great-grandmother Rose had envisioned when she'd named the cafe Luna, like moonlight, gentle enough to comfort people in darkness, bright enough to guide them toward morning, and constant enough to light the way for anyone seeking their way home. I hope you enjoyed today's story. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more stories like this. Leave a like and comment below what you thought of the story. See you in the next video.